Did you know that all humans comes from the same place? Here's how we spread everywhere. It all started 200,000 years ago in Africa, where the first humans evolved. For thousands of years, they thrived there until they began venturing beyond, searching for new lands and opportunities. 70,000 years ago, small groups left Africa and moved into the Middle East. As they adapted to new environments, their cultures, languages, and technologies began to evolve. 50,000 years ago, they reached Asia and Australia, adapting to jungles, deserts, and remote islands, with some even using early boats to explore. 40,000 years ago, they entered Europe, where the Ice Age forced them to develop better clothing, shelter, and hunting skills to survive. 15,000 years ago, they crossed into the Americas, walking from Alaska to South America. They adapted to plains, mountains, and freezing tundras, eventually building some of the first great civilizations. From a small population in Africa to 8 billion people worldwide, this journey changed history. But the real question is, where do you think humans will migrate next? Let me know in the comments.
Fascinating facts about ancient Egypt. Ancient Egyptians used a form of paper called papyrus, which was made from the river plant of the same name. It is possibly the earliest form of paper known to humans. Egyptians believed in a pantheon of gods and were one of the earliest civilizations to practice a complex religion that involved rituals, offerings, and specific burial customs. Ancient Egyptians practiced a form of dentistry and had surprisingly advanced dental problems due to the grit and sand that got into their bread and food, causing teeth wear. Hieroglyphs, the writing system of ancient Egypt, were not deciphered until the discovery of the Rosetta Stone in 1799, which carried the same text in Greek, hieroglyphics, and another form of Egyptian script.
The greatest soldiers in history were defeated by the worst traitor of the ancient world. 480 BC, ancient Greece. Sparta prepares for the greatest battle in its history against the vast Persian army. Among those who want to fight is a man named Ephialtes. He dreams of standing with the warriors of Sparta, but when he offers himself, they laugh at him. Too weak, unfit for their ranks, he is cast aside, humiliated. Days later, at Thermopylae, the Spartans hold back the Persian army for 2 days straight. Shield to shield, they look unbreakable. Victory seems possible. But the man they rejected is the one that ends them. Ephialtes knows a secret path through the mountains. He leads the Persians behind the Spartan line. By dawn, the Spartans are surrounded, their legendary stand destroyed not by strength, but by betrayal. The Persians rewarded him, but across Greece, his name was cursed, and history remembers him not as a warrior, but as the traitor who brought down Sparta's finest.
Do you know how easy it is for a country to go from looking like this to this? Why am I bringing this up? No reason. What a lot of people don't realize is that the Iranian Revolution actually started out as a more left-leaning pro-democracy movement and essentially got hijacked and used by the ultra-religious theocrats. I have been trying to tell you guys the story of the Iran hostage crisis for a minute, but every time I sit down to do it, I get sucked into talking about the Iranian Revolution of 1979 because it's such a good story. So, because history is 90% tea with a little bit of spy stuff thrown in, I'm just going to talk about that today. What you have to know is that at the time, Iran is essentially a monarchy, and the guy who's in charge is the Shah. There is like a prime minister and like some semblance of democracy, but it's not actually democratic because there's only one party that's legal and everyone has to be a member of it. An idea that the Shah had after visiting China once. Because it is the 20th century and Iran has oil, there's of course a whole bunch of Cold War nonsense. The Shah is backed by the West. They helped him consolidate power and are now making him and Iran very rich by buying a lot of oil, so he loves them. Keep in mind, the Shah is not a good dude. Because the Shah is Mr. Rah-Rah Westernism and kind of has some light delusions of grandeur, he liked to call himself the Shahan Shah or King of Kings. Humble. In 1963, because there's so much money coming in, he wants to turn Iran into a westernized superpower. He kicks off the White Revolution, named that way because it was bloodless. He's like, we gotta move away from this old school feudalism and move into this more modernized era. And the way he does that is by investing in infrastructure, Iranian businesses, education, redistributing land from feudalistic landowners. He also starts allowing for more freedom of of religion and grants women the right to vote. And while a lot of these changes are, of course, great, he also starts upsetting a couple of groups of people, namely the former landowners and the clergy, who are starting to see their power really diminish. And one of the Ayatollah, or the top clergymen, who was really outspoken about this was Ayatollah Khomeini. He kicked up such a fuss that the Shah kicked him out of Iran and he was banished and went off to Iraq. But also, like, not everything is sunshine and daisies. Number one, all of this money is a really great opportunity for corruption. And some historians think that, like, if Iranians had given it more time, they probably would have seen more of the benefits. But what they were really seeing was an extreme spike in inequality. Inflation was skyrocketing. A lot of people who didn't benefit from the land redistribution are now flooding into the cities looking for work. There's also a lot of immigration. A lot of Iranians feel like they're competing with immigrants for jobs. Where have I heard that one before? Iranians getting educated all around the world are coming back and they're finding an economy that is not equipped to employ them. But also remember, the Shah is not a good dude. So he also has a pretty brutal secret police, the Savak. And of course, populations in general are not big fans of secret police who can just like carry you away in the middle of the night just because you said something that upset the king. To add insult to injury, Americans and other Westerners can get away with anything. Iranians are like, okay, well, the Shah is obviously a problem, and he's the West's guy, so the West is obviously a problem, and that really, really breeds a lot of resentment. In 1975, it's been like 12 years at this point, but Khomeini knows how to hold a grudge. He spent this whole time preaching and writing furiously about how much the Shah sucks. He also develops this theory of guardianship of the jurist, this idea that everything, especially governments, need Muslim guardianship. So Iran and Iraq have been butting heads for a while, but in 1975 they signed a treaty that means that people, goods, and ideas can start crossing that border again, and ideas can be dangerous. Even though Khomeini is still banished, all of a sudden 12 years worth of his rants and raves flood into Iran. By the 1970s, a lot of Iranians are like, hey, we had a constitution in 1906 that basically grants us democracy, and we want to go back to that. The problem with democracy is that you're going to disagree with a lot of the people that you're engaging in it with. Kind of the point. So even though everyone's fed up, they kind of need a leader to galvanize around. Enter Khomeini. There's a little something for everyone. He's a philosopher, so intellectuals like him. He also co-opts some Marxist language, so leftists like him. And most of the pro-democracy revolutionaries are Islamic. Khomeini's just keeping his full plan mostly under wraps. He knows how to preach to a choir, and most people are like, well, it can't get any worse, right? Then in 77, a couple of things happen. Number one, Khomeini's son passes away of a heart attack in Iraq, and some people are like, it's giving secret police. And on New Year's Eve, Jimmy Carter pays Iran a visit. Even though Jimmy Carter had been trying to get the Shah to chill out on all the secret police type stuff, he gives a speech praising the Shah and calling Iran an island of stability. And people are like, excuse me? Stable for you, maybe, Mr. the West. But thanks for confirming that it's all your fault. And then the Shah, who apparently cannot read a room to save his life, takes this as a stamp of approval and his cue to really double down and finally get rid of the last bits of dissent that are bugging him. A week later, a couple of his guys anonymously published a hit piece on Khomeini, basically calling him everything under the sun. And it really, really manages to piss everyone off. So a bunch of seminary students take to the streets, and then January 9th, 1978, on the third day of otherwise peaceful demonstrations, someone in the crowd throws a rock through a shop window. Even though months later people were still convinced it was not happening until after it happened, this is considered by many as the start of the Iranian Revolution. Because of course, all hell breaks loose. It turns into a full-blown riot. Police start firing into the air and eventually fire onto the crowd. At the time, even pro-revolutionary sources documented the losses in the single digits most of the time. And at that first one, I believe their total tally is 5. Khomeini never lets a good tragedy go to waste. The rumors began immediately that it was hundreds, but the evidence doesn't seem to support that. Number one, Khomeini really popularized this idea of martyrdom. So when people were lost, it was a big deal. And number two, which makes this revolution so incredible, the demonstrations were largely peaceful. The goal was not to face off with soldiers, it was to convince them to join the demonstrators. Don't get me wrong, there were occasional skirmishes and riots that would break out, but compared to the overall numbers, it was a tiny amount. This, by the way, is part of the incredibly important role that women played. Even Khomeini had to come out and praise it a couple of times. And this is a guy who got kicked out, at least in part, for saying that women should never have a say in what happens to Iran. Not only were the women instrumental in getting a lot of men to join, they also often led at the front of the demonstrations themselves, including while carrying small children on their hip. They could disarm the soldiers more easily. Khomeini, outside of being like, well, you know what would really stick it to the Shah? Wearing hijab, again, kept his plans for women mostly under wraps. But what this event kicks off is that every 40 days, marking the end of the Islamic mourning period, there's another round of even bigger demonstrations. And then again, 40 days after that. And don't let anyone tell you that protest doesn't work, because the Shah starts making concessions almost immediately. The guy is really freaked out by unrest. He is not equipped to handle this. The guy is like battling cancer, which no one really knows at this time. When there's a handful of casualties in Tabriz, he fires all the SAVAK in the city. He starts replacing government officials with moderates, releasing political prisoners. He's like, oh, you want democracy? Sure. I'll get you democracy. And at moments, it kind of seems like the appeasement is working, right? As it kind of should. People are like, oh, okay, we're getting what we want, so we can kind of chill out. But this doesn't work for Khomeini. He wants to be top dog. So anytime things seem to be kind of chilling out, Khomeini is right there, kind of ready to stoke the flames. By summer, the demonstrations had pretty much stagnated, but then two things happened. Number one, the PM decides to try to curb inflation by cutting government spending, but then a bunch of people lose their jobs. So there's more people going, what the hell, man? Number two, and this is a big one, the Cinema Rex fire. During the demonstrations, the usual targets were things associated with Westernism, things like bars, banks, and cinemas. And on August 19th, when things had quieted down too much for some, 4 men barred the doors of the Cinema Rex theater and burned it down with hundreds inside. At least 400 were lost. Despite cinema burning being a classic Islamic extremist thing, something that they'd been doing literally for a decade, and today we know for a fact that that is exactly who was responsible, Khomeini's people immediately blamed the Shah, and people buy it for some reason. Probably because they wanted to have things to blame the Shah for. Things immediately ramp up and reach their, spoiler alert, final fever pitch phase under the Shah. This whole time the Shah is making more and more concessions. He even brings in a new PM to start organizing the elections, but things keep escalating and the people are not appeased. September 8th at midnight, the Shah, in total panic mode, imposes martial law and a curfew in Tehran. He's like, guys, I promise you we're still working on the whole democracy thing. However, 5,000 people still took to the streets in Tehran, and in Jaleh Square they faced off with the military in what is now known as Black Friday. Soldiers opened fire on the crowd, taking at least 64. It's also believed that 30 security forces were lost. Across the capital, another 24 people were lost, bringing the total to 88. But again, Khomeini, making the most of it, claims that 4,000 were lost. Khomeini used this event specifically as a pretext to say that compromise with the Shah was absolutely no longer an option. Things are getting messy, so in November, the Shah replaces his cabinet with a military government that immediately clamps back down on everything, which doesn't help things. And he addresses the nation. He apologizes for past mistakes and says, I have heard the voice of your revolution. Big mistake. Because this is the first time anyone has officially referred to this as a revolution. And this emboldens them. The Iranians are like, the Shah looks weak. And hey, you know what? This is a revolution. So now even Iranians that haven't been involved this whole time are like, oh my God, it's happening. Time to get in on this. Not only does like 10% of the Iranian population join in on peaceful demonstrations over the course of a month, which, if you know anything about revolutions, is incredible. They start engaging in general strikes across the country. And this, believe it or not, is the final kiss of death for the Shah. Because this cripples the economy, especially the oil industry. And this finally brings the Shah to his knees. He taps the leader of the National Front opposition party to be prime minister to set up this democracy. And then on January 16th, 1979, the Shah boards a plane with his wife, the Empress, and leaves Iran, never to return. Iranians are like, they almost can't believe that it happened. 2 weeks after the Shah leaves on February 1st, 1979, Khomeini returns a hero. Day one, he looks around and goes, quote, I appoint the government. I appoint the government in support of this nation. And everyone else is like, uh-oh.
This man built the largest empire the world had ever seen and wiped out 10% of the human race. It's the 12th century, Mongolia, a land of frozen winds and endless violence, where loyalty means nothing. In the middle of it all, a boy with no name, no tribe, no safety. He's captured by enemies. His family's taken away from him. But one night, he escapes. And from that moment, he makes a promise. He will never serve anyone again. The world will serve him. He unites the Mongol tribes, burns entire kingdoms for revenge, crushes cities from China to Persia. His name alone makes rulers surrender. And in the process, he wipes out 10% of the human race. But even the strongest fall. In 1227, he dies from a fall off his horse. No grand battle, no final war, buried in secret. His tomb never found. But the empire he built, it changed the world forever.